Coming up on The Cost of Living.
How many of you have any idea what Visa is? Where it's headquartered, how it's structured, who owns it, who sets the rules?
Everyone knows what a credit card is. You may have one in your pocket right now. But what do credit card companies really do? That's more of a mystery. Hi, I'm Paul Haberstrood. Welcome to an Encore presentation of The Cost of Living. When you tap your credit card, it's like flipping on a light switch. It works and you don't really think about it. But if someone asked you, what is Visa? Could you tell them? Also today, before money made the world go around, people traded. How about a bushel of wheat for a pair of shoes? Pretty old school, but bartering is making a comeback. Up first, remember those carefree days before inflation made stuff more expensive? You could grocery shop without thinking, that costs how much now? Well, what if you could turn back the clock on your grocery bill? When you're at the grocery store, sometimes you just have to forget how much those apples used to cost, or you won't buy anything.
Sometimes it is shocking walking around the grocery store. It's like window shopping. Hey, hello, $3 avocado. Am I going to buy you or am I going to not? Am I going to walk away? It's like that with the avocados, with the clamshells of blueberries.
Berry prices.
Shocking.
Yes. But Danielle Nerman, you also say there's a way that people maybe can beat those prices.
3 words: independent grocery stores. They're smaller, mostly sell fruits and vegetables, and they're not fancy. A lot of the produce comes in big bags or cases stacked on pallets. Ali Sufan's family runs Freestone Produce in Calgary, and it's there, Paul, that all my avocado toast dreams came true.
$2 a bag for 5 avocado. Potato, 10 pound, $3.99. People talk about inflation, but we've been selling 99-cent pound tomatoes for the last 12 years.
99 cents for a pound of tomatoes.
And get this, I also spotted a 5-pound bag of onions for 50 cents.
You know, I've been to stores like this, Danielle, and when I walk around, I'm like, how can they sell these vegetables for this price?
They're like a life hack for fresh produce. And you can find independents in cities across the country. Toronto has the Corner Green Grocers, then there's Fruticana in Edmonton and Kelowna, and then Kins all over Vancouver's Lower Mainland.
And these are independent stores, which are just grocers that aren't owned by one of the big 5, Loblaw, Sobeys, Metro, Costco, Walmart.
Yeah, those 5 retailers control about 75% of Canada's grocery market. And what's left is a mix of regional chains, mid-sized grocers, and small ethnic supermarkets. Altogether, there's about 6,900 independents in Canada, and savvy shoppers know that they are worth checking out because it can really bring down your produce bill.
So how do they do it?
There's a lot of things independents do differently that let them undercut the big chains on price. Like, they typically only sell what's in season. You're not going to find cherries for sale in January at one of these stores, but you'll see California citrus and dino melons from Brazil.
Tell me about a dino melon.
So it kind of looks like a giant egg. It's like bigger than a honeydew, and it's white with green spots. But it tastes like a melon. And because it's in season right now, Freestone's bringing it in by the pallet.
Huh. And because there's a lot of supply, they can keep prices low?
Yeah. If Ali Sufan can get dino melons at a great price, he can sell them at a great price. And he finds savings for customers in other ways, like when something goes wonky in the supply chain.
So the big box stores have very strict rules on temperatures for what they can travel at. Say if pineapple's supposed to travel at 40 degrees, for example, and it comes in at 38, they'll reject it. right? And there's nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly fine, perfectly safe. So it'll kick back to a company, and the company will call us, and we work with them to figure out a deal where we could sell it, and then they could recuperate some of their losses.
Okay, I know he says this is perfectly fine, perfectly safe, but if the big grocers are saying, hey, we need the pineapples at 40 degrees Fahrenheit, then are they okay if they're not that?
It's on a case-by-case basis. Like 2 degrees, he says, wouldn't make much of a difference. Like it wouldn't freeze the pineapples. And independent grocery stores, they do have to follow the same health and safety regulations as the big chains.
So they're just kind of like more flexible. They're not as rigid. They're just kind of looser. They're like, okay, pineapple's cool.
Yeah. And Ali Sifan isn't going to turn away a truckload of perfectly good pineapples if they're at a great price because he can sell them, no problem. The people who come to his store buy in bulk.
There are some communities out there that they live 2-3 families in a home, right? They're feeding probably up to 7-8 people. We have customers that you wouldn't think that would buy boxes that would come and be like, no, I need 25 pounds of tomatoes. I'm like, oh, what restaurant do you work for? No, it's for my house.
So he's moving product.
Yeah. And I've been to a couple of these independents over the last few weeks. It's an experience. They're very busy. The parking lots are full. You're circling around looking for a spot. Really long lineups at the till. But this is how they keep their prices low. Dave Harrison is an owner of another independent grocer. It's called H&W Produce. And he says they sell a lot every day, but only take a small cut of every sale.
Like cherries this year were a bumper crop out of BC, and they were just giving them away for cheap. And rather than just jack up my price and, buying low volume and high margin, we were buying semi-loads. We were making $2 or $3 a case, but we were moving semi-loads every couple days.
Yeah, the cherries I got, they were not giving them away for almost for free.
Wouldn't that be nice?
It would be, but what he's doing, it's high volume, small profit margins, and that is what helps him keep prices low?
Yeah, they're nimble, They benefit from not being that big. Tamara Soma is the research director at the Food Systems Lab out of Simon Fraser University. She says when you just have one owner, you can pounce on a great deal. But when you're one of the big guys,
the decision-making process is much more complicated. They have larger warehouses. They need to deal with a larger scale in terms of logistics. And so one decision that seemingly, should be easy to make or it should be simple to make is actually quite complicated because it will create kind of a ripple effect all throughout the supply chain. And also, it can be even impacting, the other stores. We have multiple Loblaws in a city, right? Or multiple No Frills.
Also, Paul, these big chains, they're dealing with a lot of moving parts. They don't just sell fruits and vegetables.
And that's not the only thing they're dealing with. They have shareholders.
Right.
Like Loblaw, Metro, they're publicly traded. And that means they have to keep their quarterly profits up.
Sure. And they have to be all things to all people. Pharmacies, butchers, they sell houseware, toys, shampoo. But if you go to one of Dave Harrison's stores...
No, you can't get that stuff here. No, we're 90% produce. We have a niche dairy, a niche jams, for examples, and ciders, and like a lot of the local. We stay away from all the stuff that the Walmarts and Sobeys sells.
Yeah, but Walmart's also huge for a reason because people can go there and they can get pretty much everything they need in one spot.
It's convenient. They're everywhere. Places like Freestone and H&W Produce, they're off the beaten track, not central. And that's deliberate because it keeps their rent down.
Okay, that's good for the independent grocer, but what about the customers? Like, they have to go and really seek these spots out.
They may not be on your way home from work. You might have to go on a day off. That's what Shay Duncombe does. She lives in Calgary. And a couple years ago, when food inflation was really starting to bite, she started buying her produce at a family-run grocery store. But she says you gotta shop around.
So I find that you get the best deal when you shop to multiple stores. I know that sometimes it may be convenient to just go to the one store, especially if you may not have the vehicle. But honestly, I go out of my way to just plan it within my month. Even though it may take a little bit more time, it's definitely worth the effort. Look at these jalapeno prices. A whole bag for $2.70.
It might take me like 2 months to get through a bag of jalapenos, so that might not be something I buy. But I saw key limes there, like a huge bag for $3. And I have to say, going to these independents, it was kind of fun. You can see why they're so busy, and I can totally see why people get hooked.
Well, did you get hooked on the avocado prices?
Yeah, I have been eating a lot of avocado toast.
Could you be any more of a millennial? Thanks, Danielle.
You're welcome. Three clamshells for $5.
This is a steal.
This is a best of edition of The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Haberstrood. Back in the day, and I mean way back in the day, if you took down like a woolly mammoth, you could trade some mammoth meat for a better spear. It was the barter system. Then money came along. You didn't have to find that one spear maker who had a taste for mammoth and wanted to trade. You could take your cash from hunting and buy anything you wanted. Money made transactions more efficient. But as our producer Jenny DeRosio finds, more people these days are happily doing things the old-fashioned way.
When Samantha Fanning was pregnant with her second child, she faced a dilemma. The baby room needed sprucing up, but
and I couldn't paint the room.
Samantha didn't have the time or the know-how to do it herself. And as a single mom, money was tight. Samantha's a professional photographer. So she went looking for someone to paint her nursery in exchange for something other than cash.
And so I traded photography for someone to come in and paint that bedroom.
After that, Samantha was hooked on bartering.
I did it with hair with a friend, and then I think one time I did eyelash extensions, where that's something I would never kind of have money to go and do, if not for trading. Massage therapy, when I didn't have benefits, that was really invaluable to me.
In Canada, bartering can happen between neighbors. Facebook groups are out there to help connect folks who want to get their trade on. There are apps to help small businesses trade goods and services, and community groups that host regular bartering get-togethers. One of them is Life School House.
So we bring things that we've made at home. It can be baked goods, it can be crafts, it can be art.
Christine Villeneuve lives in Antigonish, Nova Scotia.
And we put them all on a table, and everybody takes a turn introducing themselves, explaining what they've made. And then we all take turns going up and viewing the things on the table and selecting items that we would like to take home with us and trade for what we brought.
Life School House started in Halifax, but has now expanded and will launch nationally this summer. Christine says it's helped her connect with her community, make new friends, and stretch her dollars.
Feels like a really great bargain when you don't have to spend cash and you get exactly what you want.
It's hard to track how often Canadians swap yard work for sourdough bread, since it's typically an informal transaction. Robert Nason studies the informal economy. He's a professor at McGill University. He says bartering often falls under what's known as the underground economy.
If you go to, for instance, the Canadian Revenue Agency's site where they talk about the underground or informal economy, they're referring basically to any unregistered business activity. So something that's generating revenue but not paying taxes. So it's kind of undocumented economic transactions.
Exactly how much bartering is happening in Canada is hard to track. Even when the CRA puts a number to the underground economy, it includes a broad range of things: undeclared tips, hidden rent income, and the illegal drug trade. But informal or not, if you're trading your professional services, like dog walking, you should claim it as taxable income. Now, bartering isn't new. Think of Marco Polo and the Silk Road, and the Canadian fur trade.
These are some of the beginnings of economic transactions that we've seen in human history.
Even when humans started using modern currency, bartering never completely went away. It just became less popular. But Robert Nason says that's changing.
for good reason. I think in some ways, some parts of our economy have become overly financialized. They need to put a number on everything, right?
He says a lot of economic activity is just ones and zeros, moving money through cyberspace. Bartering is a movement against that. It's tangible.
It's a new trend in a way, but it's a new trend in a way that like vinyl is a new trend now. Like vinyl was the dominant way of doing things, and now it's growing again because people want the sense of materiality in a different way and moving away from pure digitalization, right? I would see this as a similar kind of thing, but a reaction against pure financialization.
Bartering is a way to leave the money out of it and make it about what else we can offer each other. So, anyone want to watch my dog this weekend? I make a mean batch of oatmeal chocolate chip. Eh? For the Cost of Living, I'm Jenny DeRosio.
So I'll put my finger on the scanner, it'll scan it, and then
Ellie Thompson starts and ends her shift at a Calgary restaurant with a quick biometric scan.
And then either a green or a red light will pop up saying whether or not it's accepted that it's me or not.
Hi there, Ellis Cho here. There was a time when employees would use a punch card to clock in. Now, more workplaces are replacing that card with your face or your fingerprint.
It is just becoming more normalized to be more digital in every aspect of our lives, from like schooling to working. So it kind of just seems like this is how it is.
Not everyone is this cool about biometrics in the workplace. More on that next week on The Cost of Living.
This is a best-of edition of The Cost of Living. This story originally aired earlier this year. I'm Paul Habersrud. Pat Nichols first went traveling on his own 6 years ago. He went backpacking in Europe on a shoestring, wound up in Prague, and figured he had enough in the budget to splash out a little.
I was out with just some random people I met from the hostel. I don't know, it was kind of the end of the trip, so we figured we'd just go to a nightclub and, have a bit of a more bougie night out than usually when you're backpacking.
So they go to a club, they get a little booth in the back with bottle service. They were told it would cost a couple $100 Canadian.
They ended up charging me euros anyways, which, at that time it was like $1.6 per euro. So yeah, it ended up being about $700.
And of course, he didn't have $700 on him.
I mean, if you've ever been to Prague, a great city, but if you've ever dealt with nightclub security at Prague or bar security, they're all very stocky, very built dudes. They scare the hell out of me, and I'm 6'7". So I don't know. I really don't know how it would have went.
So Pat pulled out his Visa card, paid the bill, and he got the heck out of there. Like the commercial says, Visa, it's everywhere you want to be. Almost anywhere in the world, you can swipe a little piece of plastic and people will just give you stuff. It's like magic. But have you ever stopped and thought, what is Visa? The founder of Visa was a guy named Dee Hock. He'd do this thing when he gave a talk. He'd hold a Visa card above his head and ask, who knows what this is? Everyone would put up their hand, and then he'd say,
how many of you have any idea where it's headquartered, how it's structured, who owns it, who sets the rules, how the pricing works? And of course, almost everyone's hand goes down.
David Stearns wrote about the history of Visa in his book, Electronic Value Exchange. Today, Visa is the 12th most valuable company in the world. And yet, it doesn't make anything. It doesn't sell anything. It doesn't even issue cards. The banks do that. So then Visa is what exactly?
Visa is fundamentally an organizational structure and a set of operating regulations that allow a whole bunch of competing banks, financial institutions, to come together and cooperate just enough to facilitate a ubiquitous payment system that none of those individual banks could have built on their own.
How can an organizational structure be worth $500 billion? It comes down to relationships. Visa has spent 50 years establishing relationships with more than 14,000 banks and financial institutions around the world. And that wasn't easy. Banks are competitive. But D. Hawk convinced them
by cooperating, they can kind of bake a larger cooperative pie and enjoy their slice of that pie, and that slice will be much bigger than a pie that they could have baked individually by themselves.
Visa's origins go back to 1958. At that time, banks were trying to figure out how to get credit cards off the ground. But stores didn't trust them, and customers didn't know what they were. So Bank of America did something now called the drop. It mailed 60,000 credit cards, unsolicited, to households in Fresno, California. Then it pumped money into advertising to teach people how to use them. The Bank AmeriCard, it took off. Other banks started to offer it, but Bank of America was making most of the money. And of course, the other banks, they did not like this. The bigger the card got, the more problems it ran into.
The whole system was about to fall apart in 1968. This is when D. Hawk, who at that point was just running a Bank AmeriCard program at a bank in Seattle, stood up and said, "Hey, I have an idea."
He realized that banks were never going to play nice together. So he came up with the thing that made Visa happen.
He's a kind of interesting dude. He was very much enamored with the way natural systems work, and that there's nobody in charge, yet somehow an ecosystem can just thrive and be, like create massive amounts of life and all kinds of variety. And so he said, well, what if we created an organization that was more like a natural system, more like an ecosystem than a traditional command and control business?
So D. Hawk convinced a bunch of bank CEOs to turn things over to him. And he pitched a different kind of corporate structure. Visa became a for-profit, non-stock membership association. It meant the member banks owned Visa, but Visa ran things. And if Visa made money, they all shared in the profits.
They've created a structure where these competitors can cooperate, right? Citibank, always wanted to create their own card network, and they tried in the 70s that would be worldwide. But it's just impossible for that one bank to have done that in the 1970s. It was much more realistic if all the banks cooperated to create that ubiquity where you could just use your card anywhere.
Part of why Visa can be used anywhere is because it delegates most of the work. The banks issue the cards to customers, and they sign up merchants. Visa is just the middleman that connects the money. It runs 6 data centers around the world. That's where the information gets sent when you tap your card, and then your transaction is accepted or declined.
Visa, I think, runs, last time I calculated out, there were something like 4,000 transactions a second, bursting upwards towards 10,000 transactions a second when they're at kind of higher load.
That works out to hundreds of millions of transactions a day. And on each one of them, merchants pay an interchange fee. It's around 1%. Most of that money goes to the banks, and then they kick back most of it to cardholders in the form of rewards. Where banks make money is when you don't pay off your card at the end of the month. That's when your credit turns into a loan. And of course, they ding you for that interest payment. As for Visa,
they get a little teeny sliver of every single exchange of value that goes across their network.
Visa processed more than 200 billion transactions last year. And those teeny little slivers it got on each one, oh man, did they add up. In 2008, when Visa went public, its initial public offering was the most valuable in history. So today, Visa and MasterCard dominate the credit card business. And we all know them. And for credit cards, that is key. It's why they spend so much on advertising.
They're doing advertising work that none of the individual banks could really realistically do on their own, because what they're trying to do is make sure that every cardholder in the world knows that they could use that card at any merchant in the world that accepts a Visa card. And so they have to have this ubiquity, right? So that ubiquity is built in the mind of the consumer through that advertising.
In the 1960s, it wasn't a given that credit cards would actually work. Visa had to build trust with banks and with all of us. That trust is Visa's secret sauce. And it's what Visa founder Dee Hock figured out.
Dee Hock was a brilliant person who I think did have some profound revelations about money. I don't think he was a great philosopher of money per se, but I do think he understood practically that moving money was going to be mostly about the exchange of trusted messages between trusted partners.
When you tap your card, the merchant trusts they'll get paid. You can be in Prague, go to a club, run up a tab, and the bouncers will let you leave. All because a little plastic card in your pocket says you're good for it. That's all for this week. The Cost of Living is based in Calgary. And on the off chance you missed the show on the radio, feel free to listen to the podcast. Find it anywhere you get podcasts. The show is produced by Daniel Nerman, Ellis Cho, and Jennifer Keene, with help from Caroline Ferris. I'm Paul Abersrud. Thanks for listening.